Hey everybody, this is Terry. I'm normally on Instagram, louisvinyl_Terry. Haven't done YouTube before. Thought about it every once in a while, but been watching a lot of videos, a lot of different channels out there in the vinyl community, and of course have been watching Noble Records for quite a long time. I'm not sure if I've caught you from the beginning or not, but as soon as I saw your 7,000 subscriber video, I thought, that might be a good opportunity to jump in. Obviously, congratulations, Dylan. Not only on 7,000 subscribers, which is not easy to do with how a lot of the algorithms run in YouTube. I've worked in media for a long time and have managed YouTube channels, and I know it can be a bear to get subscribers. And obviously, congratulations on opening the new shop. That's I know been a dream of yours, quite an accomplishment, a lot of hard work, and I imagine it's pretty tiring trying to always look for new collections and keep those bins full. I'm out in Wisconsin, not sure when I might have an opportunity to get out to the shop. I do have a brother in Richmond, Virginia, so hopefully at some point I'll make my way east again and be able to check you out in person. But in the meantime, I really enjoy watching your collection videos and seeing what you're filling up those bins with, and hopefully at some point I can get out there. So, with your first question, best finds, and the one that jumped out to me right away had to be the Kinks, Lola versus Power Man and the Money Go Round. This is an album that is really strange to me how infrequently I see this one in stores, which is pretty much never. I remember now years ago when I was living in Green Bay, I went to this dude's garage. Somebody that organizes record shows up in the Northeast Wisconsin area, and was just kind of selling from his collection out of his garage. Went there one day, was kind of checking things out, and I saw this there, and I pick it up, and it was like $80, and I got young kids, and I enjoy, of course, spending money on vinyl, but at some point you got to draw the line, and I put it back, and a lot of times when I go to shows and shops, I kind of will go in definitely with a budget, and going on some of those high end pickups are ones that I'll do it occasionally, but for this one in particular, I just didn't feel the need to get it at that moment. Have not seen this one since. Fast forward a few years, and I moved with my family. We left Northeast Wisconsin. We actually moved down to just north of Louisville, Kentucky, hence the Louisvinyl name in my Instagram handle. And was down there for just under 2 years, and we relocated, bought a house and everything. Job wasn't quite, what I was hoping for down there. We were really kind of getting a little bit homesick for Wisconsin because we both have some family up here. And I ended up taking a job back in Wisconsin. At the time, the family's still there. My wife has a job. The kids are in school. We've got to sell the house. So for just under 6 months, I was crashing with my parents, commuting more than an hour in each direction. And, as I'm trying to find a house, and the housing market in Wisconsin is bananas. Houses flying left and right. Meanwhile, we're struggling to sell the house in southern Indiana, and I'm just kind of losing my mind. We finally, as we get to last spring, the housing market down there starts warming a little bit, and we start getting a lot more foot traffic, and we get an offer, but it's a lowball offer, and we're still not happy. And then this other person comes in, and it looks like he's ready to make an offer, but he's kind of, he just can't pull the trigger on it. And meanwhile, he's this kind of guy that's actually lost multiple houses because he couldn't make a decision. It was indecisive. So I'm again losing my mind here, and just one day, end of the shift, got out of work, and I'm like, what? I can't head back to my parents' house. I need a break. I need to just get to the record store, do a little digging, see what I can find. So I go to this joint in Madison, Wisconsin. It's called Strictly Discs, and it's a really cool shop. Really tiny upstairs, and they got a huge basement, and it's just, they must have 50,000 records in this basement, maybe even more. I mean, it's insane the amount of vinyl and inventory that they have, and a lot of good stuff too. I mean, you'll see, like 90s alternative with $100+ price tags, and along with the classics, the Beatles, the Fleetwood Mac, and all that stuff, and a lot of jazz and blues, and just whatever you want you can find. So I'm hanging out at the shop, and I stare across the room, and what do I see staring back at me but this album? I go over and look at it, and it's graded, at like VG plus. They're actually really conservative with their grading. So when I saw that they had like a VG plus on it, I figured it's probably kind of minty even. So I look at the price and it's under $50, and I'm thinking, you know what, I need this album. So I bought it. Get outside, get back into the car. As I'm driving, my phone rings. It's my real estate agent back in Indiana. We got an offer, and it's like the offer that we were waiting for, full price offer. Like, absolutely, we get it. And then, like 2 days later, we put an offer in a new house, which is the one I'm in right now doing this video, and accepted. So, like, within 72 hours, found this album that I'd been wanting for years, got an accepted offer on our old house, got an offer on this house, and it felt like things, were working out. So sometimes you need a little bit of luck in the bins, and it just makes all the difference in the world. I've always loved this album too. It's got some, great tracks on it. Lola, and then of course, Strangers, the Dave Davies track. I have no idea why they haven't really repressed this one recently. We got so many represses on things like Dark Side of the Moon and all the Beatles albums and everything. And, for whatever reason, this one is desperately overdue for repress. But it was, I was, excuse me, I was glad to find this one after so long. Best song of all time. And I'm trying to think about this. Like, what is best song of all time? I don't know. What is that going to be? So what does it mean? You just there's so many great songs out there. Elvis and the Beatles and Johnny Cash and is it country? Is it blues? I don't know. So I had to just think, like, what to me, what do I think about? And I just love sometimes having to drive. I've always had long car commutes, so a lot of times I need good driving music. And one of my favorite bands just for driving has always been r.e.m. And one of my favorite r.e.m. songs is off of their oddly titled Fables of Reconstruction, or Reconstruction of the Fables, Driver 8. It's just a song, it's like anytime I hear it, whether, if I hear it on streaming or I just throw it on, I could listen to that song over and over again. It's so catchy. Easy to sing along to. I love all the early r.e.m. things. A lot of great albums. And I've even later in their career, when they went down to kind of a trio after Bill Berry left, still enjoyed them. But I think those first albums up through the mid '90s, late '90s are some of the classics, and their releases on our IRS have always been some of my favorite. But Driver 8, I guess if I have to pick a song, favorite song, best song, that's just one it's always been super catchy to me, and I just absolutely love it. Question 3: how do I track my collection? I think I'm like 90% of vinyl collectors where I'm on Discogs. I've tried a few different things. I had a spreadsheet at one point when I was probably in the 90s when my collection was mostly CDs. It's easy on the app. If I'm in a store, I can look it up really quick. Do I have it? Don't I? I've gotten really good at tracking my music because, quite frankly, probably like most of us, we've gotten burned where we look at something, think, hey, that's a great album, I need it. And then you get home and you realize you already had it. So I've really gotten into the habit of, when I buy something, I add it to Discogs immediately. There's easily 2 or 3 albums in there that are repeats, unintentional repeats. I've certainly got some in there, different pressings and stuff, or variants or whatnot that, intentionally I have repeats. Especially with Springsteen. I grew up in New Jersey, so I've got a lot of Springsteen albums and multiple copies of certain ones based on variants or some repressings or some box sets and stuff. But definitely, I'm all in at Discogs at this point. Your fourth question. So I'm watching your video, and you say, record you never sell, and immediately I know, like, there's 2 of them that I'll absolutely never sell. And then what do? You start pulling it up, and you beat me to the punch because I did the same thing. Now, I'm not a musician, so you would file these in the I guess the spoken word bin, but a number of years ago, and I wrote it down. It was September 23rd, 2014. I was on a business trip, doing a little bit of a training thing in Nashville, had some free time. I knew I would have some free time built into the schedule. So I kind of prepped some words and stuff. I've got twin daughters. I guess at the time they were about 3 years old. And I thought to myself, you know what? I would really like to get something that they can remember. Like the reality is we all have limited time on this planet, and hopefully, of course, our kids outlive us. So how, what can they have to remember me by? So I thought just capturing the moment. It was a unique time in their life. I went in, I recorded a couple of these, one for each of them. And I think the cool thing about it, we've listened to it a couple times, but I know as they get older, it's something that they're going to appreciate a little bit more. And I also think too, when they get significantly older, in their 20s, 30s, older, they got kids of their own, I hope they'll want to listen to this, but they're going to have to make an effort to listen to it. They're going to have a record player. Right now I've tried to make an effort to get them into music, and they've got their own little record player, and they've got a small collection, mostly Taylor Swift, but a handful of other Disney and a few other things. But I really hope that my collection one day, one or both of them will want to take it off my hands, and I just hope that my love of music is something that they can appreciate, and then hopefully they will, of course, have a turntable, deep into the future, and they can listen to something that I had to say to them when they were really young. Favorite record? Favorite music doc. Your fifth question. I love that Tower Records doc that you mentioned. That was a really good one, especially for me as somebody who's a really big CD buyer back in the 90s, and remembering that point of the music industry and stuff. That was really cool. Love, It Might Get Loud. That's a great one. The one, though, that I think I really love is Searching for Sugar Man. And the albums that it kind of touched on, and the legend of Sixto Rodriguez. Some amazing folk music. It's very much like in the spirit of a Bob Dylan or those other folk musicians, Dave Van Ronks and whatnot. And it's just a guy that just, he was this close to stardom and never could get over that hurdle. And it was just a really enjoyable documentary to watch, and from a unique perspective, considering South Africa and apartheid, and how they were basically cut off from the world, and it's pre-internet and all that. So how the myth of somebody could build up, and it's just a fun documentary. I've actually watched it a couple times, and of course I've picked up some represses along the way. I certainly don't have the money to pick up an original. Those are a little bit out of my price range. Favorite record that I received as a gift. People don't buy me records. People don't give me music for gifts because I have so much, and I think people just like, hey, he's got plenty, and let him go buy his own. And and personally, I prefer to buy my own. But I had to think back like to when I was a kid, and when I got into kind of like what you would consider just the regular music of the time, U2 or Springsteen or or later into the 90s, whatever I was listening to at the time. It was mostly cassette and then of course CD. But as a young kid born in the mid 70s, I had a little turntable. And it was actually one of these turntables that, quite frankly, probably makes Crosley's look like super deluxe, high end machines, because this thing was a beast. It was all plastic. It was huge. But my parents would get me records, and I still actually have my kid collection. And a few oddities in there like that make me laugh. Urban Chipmunk, which obviously, off of the Urban Cowboy. I've got a little Sesame Street Fever, which of course is, a play off of Saturday Night Fever. But the one that I listened to this thing a ton when I was a kid. My parents took me to see the movie. I still remember seeing it. I remember them this is probably a first press, it's original. The Muppet movie, the soundtrack to the movie. I listened to this thing so many times when I was a kid, and even the main song off of it, Rainbow Connection. It's one that it's still a good. I mean, it's a kid's soundtrack, but I love it, and it's every once in a while I'll still throw it on just because it's fun to listen to. But my dad is a huge music fan, and I remember, just him always, he had a reel player. Unfortunately, that thing broke, and his tapes over time got brittle, and those things started breaking. I wish, he would have saved some of those. He had this like tremendous, old school amplifier that, blew out at some point. He ended up getting, something modern, and had this crazy old turntable where you could stack like 5 albums on it, and they'd play and drop down, and then you'd flip the other 5. So it was, the disc changer of the day, and you could just, keep on listening to music all day. As far as a listening ritual, for your 7th question, I come down in the basement. We've got, it's kind of like a ranch, I guess. We got upstairs, we got the living room with the big TV, and we're in there with the family and everything. But for me to come down at night, usually, my wife will go to bed early, my kids are in bed, I come down into the basement. There's really good acoustics down here. We got nice, kind of thick carpeting, not a lot of echo across the walls, which is pretty good for a basement. The layout isn't quite what I want it to be, because we still got a lot of kid toys down here and stuff. But as they get older and the toys go away, I know I'll have an opportunity to kind of reconfigure this a little bit. But I like to come down. I got a nice leather recliner. I'll sit down. I'll throw the blanket on because it's a little cool down here. Throw a record on. Snap a quick picture of it and maybe throw it up on Instagram. I might throw on TV. I'll keep the sound off, but maybe throw, like a football game or basketball game or baseball, depending on the season. Throw it on, just, keep that on in the background. Kind of feels like a bar almost. But that's really it. I just kind of come down, like to chill out, listen to music. Occasionally I might pour myself a little cocktail. As I said, I was living down near Louisville, Kentucky for a while, and even before that had a nice acquired taste of bourbon. But we'll come down and maybe pour myself a little glass, have a belt, kind of chill out, and then go upstairs and go to bed, and rinse repeat. It's kind of try to do that 3, 4, 5 times a week. Don't get down here all 7 days, unfortunately. We get jobs and family obligations and lots of other things to do, but it's just always fun to kind of sit back and do that. So there you go. Again, congratulations on 7,000 subscribers, opening the shop. I hope I didn't ramble on too long. Hope you enjoyed this video. Of course, subscribe to my channel. Anyone else out there, subscribe, give it a little thumbs up, maybe leave a comment. Hopefully at some point, maybe I'll do another one of these. I don't have a whole lot of time. Spend a lot of time, just kind of like while laying in bed, throwing a little YouTube on, and that's kind of how I keep track of the VC on YouTube. But hopefully some folks will follow me, and maybe I'll throw another one of these up at some point. Thanks a lot.